Morning, Mrs. Slocum.
Good morning,
Miss
Captain
Brahms.
Peacock.
1 minute late.
You're lucky to have me at all, Captain Peacock. I had to throw me out before I came.
The complaint letters flooded the BBC. Viewers were outraged. A beloved character had become a national controversy, and a running gag was now seen as deeply offensive.
It's my own. I wore this when I won the Golden Pumps for the Gay Gordon.
Are you being served? The cornerstone of British sitcoms was in serious trouble. While the show projected an image of harmless fun from the Grace Brothers department store, behind the scenes, a battle was being waged over its content. Today, we're exposing the specific scenes that ignited this firestorm, pushing the show to the brink and ultimately leading to it being taken off the air for good. Laughter on the sales floor. Are You Being Served? Stands as one of Britain's most iconic sitcoms, running for an impressive 13 years from 1972 to 1985. You see, the show was set in the fictional Grace Brothers department store and revolved around the eccentric employees navigating their daily work lives with humor, innuendos, and exaggerated class distinctions. It became a cornerstone of British television, known for its sharp wit and satirical take on the retail industry. What many overlooked is that its origins were as unconventional as its humor. The show was born from the mind of Jeremy Lloyd, who drew inspiration from his own experiences working at Simpsons of Piccadilly, a real high-end London department store. He had seen firsthand the rigid hierarchies and peculiar customs that made for perfect comedic material. Lloyd pitched the idea to veteran writer David Croft, and together they presented it to the British Broadcasting Corporation, or BBC. To put it mildly, the executives were skeptical. A comedy set in a department store, relying heavily on suggestive jokes, was a huge gamble. However, they greenlit a pilot episode as part of an anthology series. That pilot, aired on September 8, 1972, was a massive hit with audiences, pulling in viewership numbers that surprised everyone. The positive response was so overwhelming that the BBC quickly commissioned a full series. A key to this success was the flawless casting. John Inman was brought on as the flamboyant Mr. Humphries, Molly Sugden as the formidable Mrs. Slocum, and Frank Thornton as the pompous Captain Peacock. The most shocking fact is that many of these actors were relatively unknown at the time, but their on-screen chemistry was electric from day one. The show quickly found its rhythm, built on physical comedy, double meanings, and a deep-seated understanding of British class dynamics. It was a world where a misplaced hat or a misunderstood comment could lead to absolute chaos. The humor wasn't just in the words, but in the stiff posture of Captain Peacock, the exasperated sighs of Mr. Rumbold, and the ever-changing, impossibly bright hair colors of Mrs. Slocum. The show became a cultural phenomenon. At its peak in the late 1970s, it regularly attracted over 20 million viewers per episode in the UK alone. That's nearly half the country tuning in to watch the antics at Grace Brothers. The success was so immense that it even spawned a feature film in 1977, where the staff goes on a disastrous holiday to the fictional nation of Costa Blanca. While the show was a smash hit, not all things are what they seem. Behind the roaring laughter, the seeds of controversy were already being planted, the very elements that made it popular. Its risque jokes and caricatured personalities were also the ones that would eventually put it on a collision course with the censors and a changing society. The comedy was a product of its time, a fact that both fueled its rise and foreshadowed its potential downfall. The 1970s in Britain was a period of great social change, but also a time when certain stereotypes were commonplace in entertainment. The writers, Croft and Lloyd, were masters of the innuendo, crafting lines that could be interpreted in two ways. This allowed them to slip adult-themed humor past the network watchdogs, leaving it up to the audience to connect the dots. This clever writing style became the show's signature, but it also meant they were constantly walking a very fine line. The success seemed unstoppable, with merchandise from board games to novelizations flying off the shelves. But the thing nobody tells you is that the more popular it became, the more scrutiny it attracted. Letters of complaint began to trickle in, targeting specific characters and jokes that some viewers found offensive. The laughter was loud, but so were the whispers of disapproval. This tension between popular appeal and growing controversy would come to define the show's legacy. But what was the first major crack to appear in the Grace Brothers facade? The joke that wasn't funny to everyone. The first and most significant storm of controversy centered around one character, Mr. Wilberforce Claiborne Humphries, played with unforgettable flair by John Inman. From his first appearance with his mincing walk, high-pitched voice, and the iconic catchphrase, "I'm free." Mr. Humphries was the show's breakout star. Many people are crazy about this character. He was funny, endearing, and unlike anyone else on television at the time. However, his portrayal immediately sparked a fierce debate that would follow the show for its entire run. You see, while the show never explicitly stated Mr. Humphries' orientation, he was widely interpreted as one of television's first recurring gay characters. This was an incredibly bold move for the early 1970s. On one hand, many viewers, including members of the gay community, celebrated the character. For the first time, they saw someone who was coded as gay in a primetime family sitcom, and he wasn't a villain or a tragic figure. He was a beloved, central part of the show. John Inman became a star overnight, his face gracing magazine covers across the country. He brought a warmth and humanity to the role that made Mr. Humphries more than just a collection of mannerisms. Inman himself always insisted that the character's private life was ambiguous, describing him as a mother's boy, and leaving the rest to the audience's imagination. This ambiguity was likely a strategic choice, allowing the show to feature the character without explicitly crossing a line that the BBC would not have allowed at the time. On the other hand, the portrayal was blasted by critics and some advocacy groups as a harmful stereotype. They argued that Mr. Humphries was a caricature, reinforcing effeminate stereotypes that were often used to mock gay men. His character was, to put it mildly, camp. The Gay Liberation Front, a prominent activist group, even picketed the show at one point, accusing it of perpetuating damaging cliches. The debate was fierce. Was Mr. Humphries a trailblazing step forward for representation, or a regressive cartoon that did more harm than good? This controversy placed the BBC in a difficult position. The show was a ratings goldmine, and Mr. Humphries was arguably its most popular asset. To tone him down would be to gut the show of one of its key comedic engines. Yet the complaints were persistent and came from a community that was fighting for serious and respectful representation. The most shocking fact is that this wasn't just a minor disagreement. It became a national conversation. Newspapers ran articles debating the character, and the question of his impact was discussed on talk shows. John Inman, for his part, was put in the difficult position of defending his most famous creation. He consistently argued that the character was intended to be funny, not malicious, and that the laughter was directed at his situations, not at who he was. Despite the pushback, the BBC stood by the show, and Mr. Humphries remained a central figure for all 10 seasons. But the controversy never truly went away. It simmered beneath the surface, a constant reminder of the fine line the show was walking. The Mr. Humphries debate was the first major challenge to the show's squeaky clean image, but it wouldn't be the last. Another recurring joke was about to cause even more trouble. How far is too far? While Mr. Humphries drew criticism for his characterization, the show's other major source of controversy came from its relentless use of double entendre, most famously delivered by the head of the ladies' department, Mrs. Slocum. Played by the brilliant Molly Sugden, Mrs. Slocum was a force of nature, with her vibrant hair and no-nonsense attitude. She was also the source of the show's most infamous running gag, her constant and very loud complaints about her cat. The thing nobody tells you is, this was no ordinary pet. Her discussions about her pussy were crafted with masterful ambiguity, leading to some of the most risque lines ever uttered on British primetime television. Phrases like, "It's a wonder I'm here at all," "My pussy got soaking wet," "I had to dry it out in front of the fire," or "Captain Peacock, I do not respond to any man's finger," were weekly staples. These jokes were a masterclass in innuendo. On the surface, she was just a concerned pet owner. But the double meaning was impossible to miss, and audiences roared with laughter. You can see this everywhere in the show's history. The writers would set up a seemingly innocent situation, only to have Mrs. Slocum deliver a line that would send the studio audience into hysterics. It was audacious, clever, and pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable for a family show. And of course, it generated a flood of complaints. Many viewers felt the jokes were vulgar and inappropriate for the show's early evening time slot. Letters poured into the BBC, accusing the program of being smutty and crude. What many overlooked was that this was precisely the point. The writers were intentionally testing the limits, using the plausible deniability of the cat to get away with humor that would otherwise have been censored. The BBC's internal standards department was reportedly in a constant state of anxiety over the show. Each script was scrutinized, yet Croft and Lloyd were so skilled at their craft that it was difficult to pin them down. How could you censor a woman for talking about her pet? The controversy around Mrs. Slocum's cat highlights the cultural tug-of-war happening at the time. On one side were the traditionalists, who believed television should be wholesome and free of such suggestiveness. On the other were the writers, and a large portion of the audience, who enjoyed the cheeky, seaside postcard style of humor. The most shocking fact is that the show's popularity often protected it from serious repercussions. With over 20 million people tuning in, the BBC was reluctant to meddle too much with a winning formula. However, the constant complaints kept the show under a microscope. There was a lingering sense that one day, a joke would go too far, a line would be too explicit, and the network would be forced to act. This wasn't the only source of adult-themed humor. The character of the junior salesman, Mr. Lucas, played by Trevor Bannister, was often seen making advances toward the junior saleswoman, Miss Brahms. His flirtatious comments and attempts to woo her were played for laughs. In the context of the 1970s, this was standard sitcom fare. But viewed through a modern lens, these scenes often depicted workplace harassment. Miss Brahms, portrayed by Wendy Richard, was always quick with a witty comeback, never a passive victim, which helped balance the dynamic. Still, the underlying theme of a male colleague persistently pursuing a female one was a recurring element that hasn't aged well and contributed to the show's controversial reputation in later years. The combination of Mr. Humphries' character and Mrs. Slocum's endless stream of innuendos created a sitcom that was perpetually on thin ice. But the drama wasn't just confined to the screen. The real Grace brothers. While Are You Being Served projected an image of a dysfunctional but ultimately happy work family, the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. Not all things are what they seem, and the pressures of starring in one of the nation's biggest shows led to rivalries, personal struggles, and departures that threatened to derail the whole operation. The most significant tension arose from the show's breakout star, John Inman. His portrayal of Mr. Humphries made him a superstar, and with that fame came top billing and media attention that reportedly caused friction with some of his castmates. Molly Sugden, an established actress before the show, and Trevor Bannister, who played Mr. Lucas, were rumored to have been frustrated as Inman increasingly became the face of the series. This imbalance is believed to be a key factor in Trevor Bannister's decision to leave the show in 1979. While the official reason was a scheduling conflict with a stage tour, many insiders believed he felt his character had been sidelined. His departure was a major blow. Mr. Lucas's lecherous but charming personality was a core part of the show's dynamic, and although he was replaced by other junior salesmen, none ever captured the same spark. His exit marked the first major change in the original cast, and a sign that the on-screen harmony wasn't always reflected off-screen. Many people are crazy about trying to find out what really happened, but the cast remained professional in public. Beyond professional rivalries, the actors faced immense personal hardships. Wendy Richard, who played the sharp-tongued Miss Brahms, battled private struggles throughout the show's run. After Are You Being Served, she would go on to achieve even greater fame in the soap opera EastEnders. But her life was marked by recurring battles with cancer, a fight she ultimately lost in 2009. Molly Sugden also faced personal tragedy after her husband passed away in 2000. The loss affected her deeply, and the once vibrant comedic actress largely withdrew from public life, passing away in 2009, the same year as her co-star, Wendy Richard. Nicholas Smith, who played the bumbling Mr. Rumbold, was the last surviving member of the original main cast, passing away in 2015. So, what about the banned scene that got the show pulled off the air? People watching this are looking for a mystery, wondering if one joke finally crossed the line. The truth is, there was no single banned scene that led to the show's cancellation. Are You Being Served was never pulled off the air. It ran for 10 full seasons, concluding in 1985. The show ended not because of a sudden scandal, but because of a gradual decline in ratings and a feeling among the cast and creators that it had simply run its course. By the mid-1980s, the world had changed. The kind of humor that was edgy and daring in 1972 was beginning to feel dated. The social landscape was different and new. More alternative comedies were emerging. The controversies that had simmered for years, the stereotypes, the innuendos, were now being viewed less as cheeky fun and more as relics of a bygone era. The show didn't end with a bang of outrage, but with a quiet fade as its cultural moment passed. The banned scene is a myth, but it's a myth born from a kernel of truth. The show was always controversial and constantly pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable. The legend of a show-ending controversy lives on because Are You Being Served always felt like it was one joke away from disaster. Was it a harmless classic or a relic that should have been left in the past? Let us know your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.